Thank you very much for coming to this presentation. I don't know if some of you, I know some of you have the book, and this book by Jorge Ruiz is incredible from my point of view. I knew a lot of these things thanks to uh, the Sons of the American Revolution, Philip Hinshaw. He passed away a few years ago, but he's the one that he introduced me, and that's why I have a display of the Spain in the American Revolution and the different books. And that's what in 20, 2010 is when I really became president of the House Spain again. I was president in the 1980s, believe it or not. And then I learned about this thanks to the Sons of the American Revolution. And but nothing was together. And Jose Luis has been able to put all these little things together in this book, and I think you're very brave to be this honest, and I hope they don't throw stones at you. Because here in the display that I have, I find a lot of people, they come here, and when they ask me and I show them other books, and this one is going to be on that table from now on. They say, well, where do you learn this? I had never heard about this in school or the university. So why do you come and say that Spain was involved in the American Revolution, blah, blah, blah. So there is a lot of misconceptions, a lot of misinformation, and I'm very glad that Jorge, that you're putting this together. So with that, I'm going to introduce Jorge, and he's going to take over. And later, after the presentation, you can talk to him. And if we get the person from the Sons of the American Revolution on time, he wants a private video about this to go to the Sons of the American Revolutions, the Daughters of the American Revolutions, and the Children of the American Revolution. So I hope we can do that. With that, Jorge.
Thank you, Jesus. Thank you all for coming here. It's not easy, I know. It's 6 p.m. It's a Wednesday, if I don't, and it's difficult to gather more than 2 or 3 persons in a presentation of this topic. So thank you so much. I've been in places really worse with 2 or 3 person in public, and then in any case, I give the presentation the same way. So you don't know when you are going to make the difference, so you need to always do the same. So, well, probably because this auditorium is pro Spain, right? But in some cases, what I'm gonna explain you is going to be painful. It's going to be painful because we have knowledge about this for 250 years that was hiding for many reasons. And it's very, very, very difficult today to change minds even if you are presenting proofs of any kind. The same thing that I was doing my whole life is to prove it, present proofs. You will find the book Presidio. I'm letting the main characters in this movie to explain themselves. So I'm adding very few literature to anything, and I'm just using primary resources, original documents. Let the protagonist to tell the story. The same thing is what I made with Revolution. The point with Revolution is that Revolution changed. Can I say that Revolution changed my soul? Because I was really convinced of many things that chapter after chapter, one after the other, I was finding fraud, I was finding lies one after the other. So it was very painful to write this book. So in some way that book is, all books take something from you, all books. But this one was, for me, for myself, was very painful to do it. So it's gonna be very painful also for the readers. So the only moment in history, in this 250 years after the revolution, the only moment when an American voluntarily, without request, says something good about the Spanish involvement in the independence was in 1976, the President Gerald Ford, who said this. Because after that, we have some statues here and there. We have in Spain, we had really good help. For example, organizations like yours, the Sons of the American Revolutions, doctors, the Granaderos de Galvez. We get really help, but wasn't enough. So, for example, to get the portrait of Bernardo de Galvez again in the capital was under request, the request that anyone could make, right? So the American government, they asked for 400 signatures to put the portrait in the capital again. Well, Spain presented 4 million, right? And it's not only people from Spain, but also from America that wanted to have this done. We have, for example, in the backside, in the lot backside of the White House, we have a square, big square, Lafayette Square. After the reading of this book, you will find that Lafayette did a very little for the revolution compared to what, for example, did Bernardo de Galvez and many other Spaniards. You will find that. So in 1976, the King of Spain, Juan Carlos I, and Queen Sofia, very young, come here and unveiled the statue of Bernardo de Galvez in a very secondary street in Washington, D.C. So after all those requests, after all that work, they gave us just a little square in a small park in Washington, D.C. If you finish this book, to read this book, you will find that Bernardo de Galvez, as a representation of the rest of the Spaniards collaborating in the independence of the United States, should be in front of the Capitol. Right below in front of the obelisk, should be there, not in one corner, lost in here and there, right? But anyway, I told you that this thing is gonna be painful. So follow the money. We need to follow the money. This is at the end of the war. We have the writings of Madison collected in Comaker and Morris in 1958. So everything is referenced. American source of information, right? At the end, 1783, the congressmen say, okay, we need to know how much we owe to the after the war, how much we owe to the foreign powers, right? So we have two important things, right? To the Fermiers Généraux of France, 1 million livres tournois. That was the not the coin, because wasn't a real money in that moment, just paper money. And the fermier généraux of France is the Trésor. Like here, the IRS, right? The Trésor. Then this is a guy, Beaumarchais. They owe 3 million livres tournois. Okay. Then we have all of this. Why 6 million? So theoretically, the French in those years they were given 6 million. 6 million is not 5, it's not 10, it's not 1. Why 6? Because the change. Let me check if we have the arrow here. Come on, change. Here, there. Because the change we have is the livre tournois is more or less, peso dollar, 5.40 pesos dollars. So what they were given, I will show you why this question marks, was 1 million pesos. This is important. So 1 million pesos, you convert to livres tournois because they were French, so supposedly they were paying in livres tournois. 5.40. Let's put it 6 with the interest, right? No, I'm going forward, and I want to go back, right there. So I want you to keep in mind these two quantities, right? Later we will talk about loan granted by Spain to John Jay, $150,000. Really? So this is something. This is not adding, right? And who is John Jay? Okay, let's go. Then, according to the American historiography, there are a lot of historians that they want to separate the three wars instead of one, right? We have the War of U.S. independence has nothing in common with the Anglo-Spanish War or the French-English War. Why? Because if you separate, no. If you spend millions in your war against the British, is your problem. Nothing to do with the American Revolution. No, I'm at war with the British because I'm helping you in your independence. So that's the first thing, right? So the conclusion, Spain did not help the United States. Okay. Spain was only interested in conquering Gibraltar. This is the main thing that you can find in hundreds of references, bibliographical references of American writing about this. You all know what is Gibraltar. It's a very small rock in the south of Spain. So why, and at the end of the presentation, you will see why to send all that ridiculous amount of money, of millions, to America if you want to recover a small rock in south of Spain. So you will send your forces, your power, your money, you will send it to Gibraltar, not to America. So this is a joke. When you read this in a book, you are kidding me. Really? So the conclusion, we Americans owe nothing. 250 years in that way. I told you, this is another thing, and it's very important. You don't really know how important is this. We have 1 peso or dollar, right? These two coins, tournois and sterling, didn't exist. Only exist in paper. They didn't have the power to make coins. So when the British, for example, or the French, they say, okay, we are paying with 6 millions of livres tournois. In reality, they are sending 1 million pesos. Because in that moment, the only coin existing in the world in such amount to use it like today, we have the money, the dollars, was the peso. Not the sterling, not the tournois. And this is the proof. why the Americans choose the peso? Because it was the only one physical. Okay? Americans, they were using the Spanish pesos until the 1850s. So when in documents when we find, like in that one, right, $150 in reality is 150,000 pesos. That's the first most important thing. Dollars, no, Spanish pesos. Then they change the name and they use Spanish dollars. And after some years, they say, okay, Spaniards, in reality, they are the enemies because we want to grow over the Spanish territories because of the manifest destiny, right? They were not growing over the French territories. They were growing over the Spanish territories. Texas, Florida, and then California over the Mexicans, right? So drop the Spanish word on that. Keep only dollars. So from the very beginning, a dollar is not an American coin, it's an Spanish coin, right? So the importance of Spain in the revolution started in the coin they use. When the soldiers at the end, before the Battle of Yorktown, the Continental Army received their first wage, they received Spanish pesos. They were paid in Spanish pesos. They were seeing the face of Charles III. So this is not livres tournois. This is Spanish pesos. And this is important for many reasons. We have dollars, yes. So this one is the Virginia states. This is a will to pay. This is not a dollar. You need to have something, gold, diamonds, whatever, to support the money you print in paper. They were supporting this with the Spanish dollars. So this is the first in the forehead, like we say in Spanish, right? La primera en la frente. First in the forehead. So this is another very important thing because the Congress recognized this debt, right? So we have 1 million and 3 millions, at the end 4 millions. I will explain in a minute about this. Those two quantities was the only moment the French sent some supplies. After that, the French were sending only money. There are no more supplies. Okay? And I will explain that in a minute. '76, we have the Benjamin Franklin, we have Silas Deane, and we have Arthur Lee, 3 congressmen that came to Europe. Arthur Lee was the one designated to Spain, Franklin to France, and Silas Deane at the end, they just became British again, right? So, this is Vergennes, the first minister of the Louis the 16th, the French prime minister, and this is a guy named Beaumarchais. Remember that on the list, Beaumarchais. So if you translate Beaumarchais to English, that means good business. This is the surname of that guy, good business. We start linking the dots, right? These 3 guys came to Europe with a petition of supplies. This is an estimate, right? Translated to Spanish from the Spanish in Paris ambassador, Conde de Aranda. They were asking for 216 cannons. We have here 300 1,000 pounds of gunpowder, 3,000 muskets, 3,000 uniforms, 3,000, 300,000. Remember those numbers. They were asking for this. So Prime Minister Bergens talked to the, remember that in that moment, after the 7 Years' War, which is in 1763, the Bourbon dynasty was ruling in Spain and in France. And they have a family compact. So if France or Spain get in trouble with an enemy, the other one will be obliged to defend the other ground. So they were in constant communication. You will find this. The book is about the battles, yes, of course, because if not, it's a very boring book if you don't put some battles in there. But it's about the communication between two governments, right? And you are gonna see how difficult were those negotiations. And one of those negotiations was Bergen asking to Grimaldi, the prime minister, Spanish prime minister, okay, if we put together 2 million French livres, 1 million from Spain, 1 million from France, and we buy all those supplies and we send it to America. And by the way, those supplies at the end were purchased, right? And they came for the Battle of Saratoga. Okay, but we Spaniards, we don't want a war with Britain again for a millennia. If it's, we don't want to get in at war with the English guys again. So this gonna be secret. The problem is that Louis the 16th was in problem with his own population, right? He lost the 7 Years' War. The country was broken absolutely, and in the military, in the economic. They are selling for 250 years. They are selling the idea that no, France was very powerful and very rich, and no, they were broken, and we have the documents. That's the problem. Is that for many people that has an agenda or want to lie with a narrative or something, the problem is that the Spaniards are so stubborn that they make 6 copies of each document. So if you go to the Archivo General de Indias, you will find 90 million documents. I have a document for the Presidio book, for example. Let me get this too. Probably good for the video, right? So this book is the first one I translate to the. It's about those previous years, no? So for this book, I found documents in the Spanish Archivo General de Indias, in the Archivo Franciscano, in the Archivo Jesuita, in many, even churches in north of Mexico, they have archives and they have a lot of documents. What they were saying, we have no documents, and we don't want to read the Spanish documents. So, okay, pues hire a Mexican. They are very good historians. Hire a Mexicans. They will translate the documents for you, and you will have a very good conclusion in your narratives and everything. Well, they don't want. We have in the Archivo General de la Nación in Mexico City, I don't know, maybe the same. For this book, I had to read one of those 90 million documents is of 4,000 pages. So it's not only 90 million, you multiply that. You can spend, I don't know, 70 lives just diving in the Spanish archives. So that's the problem. When a historian, they say, okay, I didn't found any document. Really? So come back again to the archives and try to do better, right? We have all those documents. Remember those two quantities I told you, right? So the 300,000 pounds of gunpowder, 3,000 muskets, and 30,000 uniforms, because we are getting warm. So yes, the French, they wanted to public recognize that they were involved in the revolution. The king needed this like water, like air to breathe, because in that way, probably what happens 6-7 years later probably will didn't happen, which is the French, they cut the head of the king, right? So that was the problem that French has, and they needed to motivate the population. We are at war against the British. And the Spanish was just the opposite. The Spaniards were saying, no, we are not making public this. We cannot afford another war against the British. So they say, let me come back again. The prime minister, the French prime minister, okay, I have a very special guy. This is a friend of mine that could manage this secretly, right? He is a trader. He can do this. He can get the supplies into America. Nobody will know anything. My friend Beaumarchais. Good business. Okay. So Spain sent 1 million French livres. This is the estimate. This is the bill. So the bill is not anymore 2 millions, it's 7 millions. Because that guy, Beaumarchais, decided to purchase 8 transport vessels. We started to understand many things, right? So the Spanish crown, they say, really? So you get the estimate, we got the estimate, and this is not a word about vessels. So 8 transport vessels, 300,000 pounds of powder, soldiers, uniforms, 30,000, and 30,000 should be radar, muskets, right? So because Spain put just 1 million livres, and France already, they put 3,500, 3.5 million livres coming from their own warehouses in species, right, in goods. So Spain need to add to that million, need to add 2.5 millions more. We have really too much experience to know that this is starting to be a scam, a swindle. Okay, cash advances for officer and ship crews amount to 600,000. What is that? 600,000? We don't know, right? We don't have the examples to compare what is 600,000. So we go to the Yorktown battle, and the army, the Continental Army of 9,000 soldiers, plus the 4,000 soldiers of the French army who were to fight in Yorktown. So we have 13,000 soldiers. They were at mutiny. How do you say that? They were in I don't get the word in English now. So they say, we don't want to fight. You pay us something, because the Continental Army was fighting for free after 3-4 years. For free, they didn't get a single dime. And the French were sailing from France to the Caribbean, and from the Caribbean to Chesapeake, right? They were 4 or 5 months without wage. So in that moment, they said, no, we are not going to fight against the British. So you have to pay us something. So the payment for several years and several months of those soldiers were 500,000 French livres. So to 8 crews for the 8 ships to transport the goods from France to Americas, they were getting more than a complete army. So this is really overpriced, but not for a dime, no. It's overpriced, it's crazy. So how many crew, how many people were in those vessels? Admirals, all of them were admirals. Keep going, don't worry. I have more. This is so it's saying there. This is when I use the cursive in my books. This is the transcript of the original document. So this is words of the Beaumarchais himself, right? This is not mine. This is. It is therefore necessary that Spain, which contributed nothing in goods, provide a sum of 2.5 million livres tournois in order to place itself on an equal footing with France. So the Spanish ambassador, he said, we never said that we are gonna be paying the half of the thing, and your guy is spending a lot of more money that was in the estimate. So what are you telling about? At the end, Spain paid for that and for many other things, right? So Spain, yes, Spain get to the 3.5 million, but they said, okay, this is a secret help. Don't tell anybody. Now Beaumarchais, from a French document. At the end, the important is here. By selling the gunpowder to the insurgents at market price, I shall make a substantial profit from it. So this guy is the hero of the revolution. For 250 years, the Americans, they were saying, no, the French, Beaumarchais, and Bergens, they were heroes of the revolution. They were helping us. And you get into the many pages dedicated to the American Revolution today in internet, and you will find these two guys as heroes, really, as heroes. Substantial profit it is. This guy wanted to fill his pockets, not to help the revolution. Wait, I have more. I have procured, myself, and I procure you guys to make pum pum to the British with all of this. It's own words, and this one is a American document. Okay, so what I get, all you will find in this book, and very few, just some here and there. Thomas Chavez, for example, other author. What I make this crossing the 4 sources: the American, the British, the Spanish, and the French. So if you get there, you get the truth, and that was surprising, because until now I knew whatever was told by the American sources that we had, right? So far, I have procured really 20,000 pounds of cannon powder. You remember? Told you. He built 300,000 pounds of cannon powder coming from the French houses. And now he is declaring to Franklin that he provided only 20,000. So what is the rest? Didn't exist. So France didn't provide anything from the warehouses. They just took the money from Spain. $20,000 excellent muskets. So he downloaded the quantities from 30,000 to 20,000. So, to Beaumarchais, 3 million, this is from Spain. To the Treasury of France, they didn't pay for this. Documented. So this is not Jorge telling you a story, a good story. Documented. This is a lie. So now, if I catch you in the first one, can you tell me if I can believe the rest of your account? Probably not. Huh? So how much of this 30,000 million livres tournois, you change this to dollars, you get 7 million, $7 million. How much of this is from Spain and how much is from France? You will see in a minute. So what happens that the Spaniards, they say, okay, once and no more. They pay the surplus. Beaumarchais took care of that sending. They didn't need 8 old vessels that they built like new vessels. They didn't need 8 vessels because the those souls 300,000 pounds was only 20. So, and they decided, no, from now on we are going to take care of this with our own people, and we will do this by ourselves. That moment, you see in that thing, the rest is only payments in money, theoretically. The rest of the supplies were coming from Spain, managed by Gardoki. And Gardoki was a very serious guy that he then became an ambassador at the end of the war, an ambassador with the British, and the only ambassador that Spain has in Washington, D.C. So was a very serious guy who took care of all this and get the supplies into America. We have a problem with the uniforms. And this is where I get this information is crossing the 4 sources and many sources that we got the receipts of the sendings, but in that moment we lacked the receipt of the receipts, right? Now we have it because the Americans are saying no. We have records that when the supplies came to the 13 colonies, that was difficult because in the way we have the British probably in Boston and they had to unload in Georgia instead of the north. They go to the south. Okay, the supplies weren't constant and in the same place, right? So what happens that they send, for example, 30,000, 20,000 uniforms and they arrive in Georgia, in Georgia, but the state of Georgia kept all that batch of supplies. Probably in the future we will need them, so we are not going to share the supplies with Virginia, with Massachusetts, with the rest, right? We are going to keep it. So that happens that in the sending of Beaumarchais, that was 30,000, at the end was 20,000, right? 20,000 uniforms. From Spain, they send 9,000 yards of blue cloth, 5,000 of white, and 3 crates, big crates of buttons, right? The same moment. In September, this famous blankets. So they send merino blankets from Palencia. This is not dye, so they came, and we call it crudo. It's the raw without dyeing, right? No color. They sent 30,000 because Washington was asking, okay, we are dying of cold, so we are freezing here. We need blankets. So they provided blankets. So you will find that the blankets were same, and the Americans in some moment they say, okay, but this is free, no? No, this is not free. We are adding this. They thought that if the supplies came from Spain, that was free, and if the supplies came from France, they put it in the list of that debt. Why? So this is something that I didn't get it yet. Why to make a list with all the French debt and not with the Spanish debt? So and we have the document saying, no, we are not gonna pay for the blankets. You say that you are gonna give it to us. Really? So and more uniforms, right? 1718 January, another batch of several thousand uniforms. And I will going back to that one in a minute, right? British Redcoats uniforms. 1781 for uniforms for Yorktown. So that mutiny that the Continental Army had in Yorktown was also because they didn't have any supply. They didn't have gunpowder for the cannons, or and Washington was saying, "We are naked. We need uniforms." Again, what happens with the uniforms? So at the end, we have that the Continental Army was roughly 10,000 soldiers along the whole war, and Spain sent something close to 130,000 uniforms. 13 uniforms for each soldier, really. And they are constantly uh, whining that they are naked. The thing is that we had the records, and the records are saying that the merchants, when those supplies came to the United States, the merchants took care of that. Took care. Right? I'm saying enough. Right? Took care means I keep this, I sell to my sell, make money, make money, make money. We have records saying that in some cases the complete carts of uniforms were rooting in warehouses in the countryside. That's normal because you are at war and this is chaos made by. But you cannot 250 years later saying that we did nothing. Okay. 1780 September, British Redcoats and blue Spanish army plus uniforms for Rochambeau army. This is a very special case because probably some of you will know that Luis de Cordova, the admiral, Spanish admiral, captured 60 ships, British ships. In those ships, there were around, I'm not exactly that date, but it's probably around 20,000 redcoats. That moment, John Jay had a secretary named Harrison. Harrison was acting as a secretary of John Jay in Cadiz, which was in that moment the main thing in Spain about the Americas and about the revolution. So that those uniforms were captured by the Spaniards and were in a auctioneer. So the secretary of John Jay get money from the Spanish, $15,000. He goes to the auctioneer and bought the British redcoats and sent the British redcoat to America. And Washington said, "You are idiots. They are red. So what are you gonna do with the redcoats?" So they didn't throw it away because you can re-dye, and those redcoats probably became brown or black or whatever, and probably those finish in the second market on the black market.
Also, during the capture of that fleet, the stock market in London
Yeah,
fall
yeah,
a lot.
yeah. This is something that I have in the book. I have everything in the book, right? Everything about the revolution related in some way to Spanish, with the Spanish involvement in some way, or economic or military, or is in the book, different chapter. So that was the prime minister, because there is a very special guy, John Jay, that lot of problems. He is the cause of I'm putting him as a guilty of the Spanish Empire uh, down, right? So he gave those $15,000 to Spanish pesos to Harrison. He bought the British Red Coast when the Spanish government already paid for new blue uniforms for the Americans. So at the end, Spain paid for both batches and sent both batches to America. You are adding, and you have the 130,000 uniforms for 10,000 soldiers. There are, I have a friends that are sending me information, and there are some of those historians claiming that the French sent 400,000 muskets. From where do you get that idea? For for a 10,000 soldier army, you are sending 400,000. How many muskets? How many? What do we have? 40 muskets for each soldier. That's, hey, come on. They are inventing things completely, one after the other. Okay. Artillery, Spanish Army. Captain of militia, Spanish Army. Continental Army uniform. Then we have some different, variants, but the main is this. I don't know from where they got the idea that the Spanish provided the uniforms. So it's the same uniform, really? The same, exactly the same. We don't have time, and I will skip Oliver Pollock. I will give you an advice that Oliver Pollock chapter will crush you. Any thoughts that you keep about this, that Oliver Pollock will crush you. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead. So, well, in any case, you can read this from the bottom. Yes, I will give you a minute to read this, because if I expand this, we have for an hour more. This is what you will find in the book. The last line. So he was an intermediary. He was asking Galvez and the Spanish government for supplies. He took the supplies from New Orleans and carried them to San Luis, Missouri. And at the end of the war, he was claiming for Spain owed him almost $500,000. So the United States used that claim against Spain, and for that reason, they pay $0 in the vote of Florida. United States get Florida free because Oliver Pollock. Now is the financier of the revolution. He declares to have this is the only thing that will add. He declares to have before the war and fortune of $100,000, and Hamilton is saying at the end of the war that the total cost was $134 million. So if you put things in context, this poor guy with just $100,000 couldn't be in his whole life the financier of the revolution. There is no way. Because if you need to put in context everything, if you are telling just small chapters of history separated, you cannot make the links. But in that moment, put it in context. How could be him the financier with $100,000? Really, this is for what? For the shocks? To pay the shocks? So this is we have the problem with Spain is that we have that it's not a good thing to concentrate everything in just one guy. And we have the revolution about Galvez, and Galvez is everywhere, and it looks that Galvez was like Superman, was everywhere and get everything. We have like, I don't know what you like, what you want, 100 guys like Galvez helping the independence of the United States, like Saavedra. Saavedra was the one who was the real financier who get the money from the whole empire, from the whole Spanish empire in South America, in North America, in Cuba, in Spain. He gathered all those money and sent millions to the revolution. And the most important is, if he didn't collect 2.6 million pesos, the American never get to Georgetown. Georgetown was paid in full by Spain, thanks to this guy, Francisco de Saavedra, Georgetown. They don't explain you this in any book. So this is something that a guy that you know, right? Manuel Olmedo Checa is a researcher in Spain and made a wonderful work for 30 years or more. And he get the documents that Georgetown was paid in full by Spain, 2.6 million, getting from the whole empire. But there is a problem that I was crossing the information, and I get that two researchers, Thomas Fleming and Richard Ketchum, 70, probably they are not related because of the date, right? 34 years apart, two Americans, saying that from those $2.6 million, Rochambeau, at the end of Georgetown, compensate the British with $665,000, which was crazy. So this is something that I didn't have the time, because the book, you have a site to the a quick view of the book. You will find a lot of information. I didn't have the time. I need to, for this book to give to the publisher in before, because of the date, no, because of the event. But there is a lot of those chapters, the Beaumarchais, the Pollock, the one of the Georgetown, and many chapters that need to be keep the research, but in deep. Not what I did was just blowing the dust on top of the document, and I get all of this. So in the moment I get deep, so what could appear there, I don't know. If this is true, you are paying the loser?
Not with your money.
No, obviously. So is it being generous with other people's money is easy. It's very funny. They didn't have. So Georgetown was a no-go until Saavedra put the money. And they upload, and this is documented, they upload the money in the French ships and take it to Chesapeake for the battle and for everything. And we got the receipts. You will see. We got the receipts. But this is something to follow. Paying the loser, paying the enemy, very complicated. Smells very bad. And it's not the Spaniards saying it, it's two American researchers. $500,000 pesos to the French Navy before Georgetown. 1 million. We have the receipts. So no, we cannot find documents. We have the receipts. This one is very funny. So the French were so powerful that they were repairing their ships in the Spanish workshops. and they didn't pay a single dime for their operations. Not a single dime. We have here 1.2 million. Go to Brest, go to Toulon, and repair the ships there. No, they were going to Ferrol and to Cadiz to repair the French ships in the Spanish ports without paying. This is gonna be very funny, but let me keep going. Similar to that one, right? Another million going in French ships from Cuba to Chesapeake to Georgetown. Let me explain you this. So after all of this, this is a request from the French ambassador to the Prime Minister Florida Blanca asking for 4,000 mules. So that was an exchange of letters from both politicians, not both, many politicians in the Spanish government saying, what is that? What else? So the money, the ships, and even the mules. So that, and they were, you know, if you know how is the Spanish character, we are sometimes we are serious, but sometimes the black humor that the British are very proud is nothing compared to what we can say between Spaniards about this. The jokes without end. Even the mules, everything, and we have the documents. They didn't show this, right? In American schools, they didn't show this. Only France, only the... What did the French? They are saying Lafayette, right? From 76 to 81, how many French do we have battling here in the battles? Lafayette. Lafayette came here as a 19-year-old guy looking for adventures, and probably because he was so young, George Washington took him under his wing and say, okay, come here. I'm going to teach you a couple things and blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the war, in 1781, just for Georgetown, gave him the command of a division. This is everything that French give for the revolution in those years. Only Lafayette. Yes, for Georgetown, they unload. That was, I don't recall if it's north or south of New York. They unload the army of Rochambeau, 4,000 soldiers, right? And they were helping for the Battle of Georgetown. Only in 1781, so the involvement of boots on the ground of the French was very short, right? So we have 1780 after the capture of that British fleet, right? The Spaniards sent the expeditionary army to the Caribbean to fight the British in Pensacola, and they planned to conquer Jamaica and help. So the French sent 4,000 soldiers. That expeditionary force from Spain was 11,000. They didn't were in American territory, right? In colonial territory, if you want to say that. But they were helping to the revolution. So you compare forces, right? 4,000 against 11,000, my goodness. So the cost of that, and you will find a document in the book, everything is documented. The cost of that was $8 million to send that force. In that moment, France, 1 year later, was obliged to collaborate with that 4,000 soldiers, right? It's a bit tricky, right? Sorry about that. But this is related to this. So to get the 4,000 soldiers for the Battle of Yorktown, Spain had to pay 2.3 million, 2.5 million, and we have the documents again, to bring the French Navy to the Caribbean. So the French Navy of the Grasse, they said, the French, they say, if you don't give me money, I'm not moving my ships to the revolution. I'm sorry, I'm not doing that. So Spanish government sent 2.5 millions. And then they pay another 2.6 million, that is the quantity I told you a minute ago, right? For the Yorktown. And several million in 1782 to finance the the broken French crown. In that moment, they were about to cut the head of Louis XVI. At the end, after 7 years, they cut that head, right? You remember. So, after all of that, how many of this is French money or Spanish money? After all of that, and I showed you documents, right? I told you it was going to be painful. What the Spanish people sacrifice there, we have that to get all that money was very difficult to get that money. He need to pull all the sources that they have, even the church. So we have a couple of unfinished cathedrals in Spain. This one is the one from Malaga, and we have also the Cathedral of Toledo, because the Cathedral of Toledo put for that 64,000 pesos, dollars, and the Cathedral of Malaga put 50,000. That was enough to finish the cathedral. The church put it for the revolution, and after the revolution happened, that the French didn't pay a single dime of that debt to Spain. Why? Because that was the ancient regime. So that was the kings of France, right? Once the revolution came, the revolutionary, and after that the Napoleon, they said, no, we are not honoring any debt from the ancient regime. So all those money never get to Spain. That were lost in France, right? And now the French were so proud to say, we put the money. No, you put nothing. Sorry. Okay? I don't have time for this. Again, another good guy, John Jay. In that moment, when I finish the chapter of John Jay, I wanna burn something. I wanna burn something. Right? So I let you. If you don't want to buy the book, at least ask for the book in the library and borrow it and read it. Okay, because it's a very interesting story. So when we finish the revolution, what happens? That Spain lost all American territories to American hands in the north, and in the south into independence. So after several years, what left to Spain? Just Cuba, Puerto Rico, Filipinas, and Guam. That was the consequences. France, you remember that. What happens with the Americans? They became independent, but the debt with the British was criminal, horrible, right? Who won really the revolution? The British. The British won the revolution. So they get the same things that they have before the revolution, which was the trade, the commerce with the Americans, right? This is what they wanted. But before the revolution, what was the cost? To keep 20,000, 30,000 soldiers in American soil. After the revolution, the Americans were defending themselves, and the British have the same without cost. Who won the revolution? Really? Well, this is how the word ends. A little comment about this. We have the very incompetent, and we have to say this after the reading, but the very incompetent Admiral de Grasse, French guy, and the the two very good sailors, admirals, British, that George Rodney and Samuel Hood. And I'm not pro-British. Sorry about that. If you think that I'm kind of for the British, but is is worth of admiration. What the British did with the French, they annihilated the French totally. And that guy, de Grasse, was so proud. I had the best navy in that moment. They annihilated the French. So after Yorktown, the British were broken, right? We lost the war. We are going to end this crazy thing. We are going to give them the independence, and we are going to sign any treaty that they offer us. 3 months later, this guy led the British to annihilate him. So the British came to the peace table with all the power. No, we are not giving you this. We are not giving you this, because our navy still stood. You know, yeah. So that was the end of the war because of that guy. Again, the French, right? This is the Ville de Paris, and the other admiral, Samuel Hood, in a very stupid, you will read it in chapter, a very stupid thing, just one salvo, not necessary at all, but provoked by de Grasse, killed around 100 guys in the Ville, French guys, French sailors in the Ville de Paris. And after that, the only out of 1,500 souls in the Ville de Paris, because they were carrying not only the artillerymen by the sailors, they were carrying 1,000, a division of the French army, and after that only 3 guys was unharmed. One of them was de Grasse. Who were these guys? The place of this guy should be here, the most exposed place in the ship, and after the battle he came unharmed. Beautiful. So just to unload, to how do you say, unload the flag, the French flag, and surrender the ship. Well, this is, well, you will find something. I want to explain you this. This is about, because this is for Texas. So the Texas people want to be now part of the sons and daughters of the American revolutions. Well, but Texas didn't help the revolution. So the way to say is, we provide 11,000 heads of cattle to the revolution. Well, this is, according to the documents, this is false. So look for another way to get into the sons of American Revolution. But this is, you will find that this is a very wide investigation I made for a year. So this many things happened, that some became true and other became false. I don't think you are really interested in my proofs, documental proofs for those things. And I think I finished with this. So if you have any questions,